Turns out we don't need masks. We're 6 feet apart.
Live from St. John's, it's the Big Cancer Hookup.
It's the Big Cancer Hookup with Carolyn Van, Fiona Schulte, Alex Mandarino, Gabrielle Fecteau, Karine Chalifour, musical guest Kathy Stock, and your host Geoff Eaton.
All right, gang, here we are, live from St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. 2020 is so crazy, we had to squeeze in 2 Big Cancer Hookups. Thank you all for connecting with us all the way across this big, beautiful country. Those of you who are brand new are going to hear me say this for the first time. Those of you who are veterans of the Yak community, please join with me when we say to all of the new Yakkers joining us tonight, Yak's got your back. Welcome home to all of you. This is your place where having cancer as a young adult is normal. The virtual big space we are connecting on tonight, it is for all of us with this uniquely wild experience of being diagnosed with cancer in our late teens, 20s, or 30s. Our mission at Young Adult Cancer Canada, YAC for short, is to support you with, through, and beyond your cancer. We deliver a whole collection of face-to-face and web-based programs in normal times, and we've made a series of amazing pivots this year in 2020. We want you to know that we are here, and the pillars really kind of propping up this mission of ours are these truths that are not really often spoken. Cancer is different for young adults. Now, it's not more difficult. Many of us have had people in our lives, young and old, who've been diagnosed with cancer. It's a huge challenge no matter when it comes. For young adults in their late teens, 20s, and 30s, it's different because life is different. And there is another reality that really underpins YAC's mission, and this reality that recovery very often takes longer than treatment, which is why YAC's got your back. Whenever you have found YAC, you should know that we will have your back for as long as you want. Now, normally, in regular times, we're hooking up in socials, literally from coast to coast to coast, all over the place, and I'm running through a whole train of cities, from Victoria to St. John's and all kinds of beautiful places in between. Tonight, we are not. One of the many changes we've made to 2020, obviously. So you're connecting in solo groups, socially safe groups if you're together, being safe in your bubbles. But we're all connected still digitally. And I hope you're connecting on the social channels tonight to connect to this show and to all of your Yakker buddies in our public and or private groups, whatever works for you. Trist, I know we've got a map of YAC. We call it the YAC map. I use it in presentations all the time. I want to show you exactly what I mean when I'm talking about connecting. This is one of the most powerful maps that I've ever seen. It's the map of YAC's survivor community. This is a map of you, all of you connecting here tonight. Literally tonight, just joining us here, we've got Northwest Territories, Yukon, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Nunavut. We got postal codes all over the place. XOE, you guys know where XOE is. Northwest Territories, I didn't know that. V2X, BC. T1B, Alberta. We got all kinds. Quebec, New Brunswick, E2H. This is postal codes, and that is exactly the map you see. Now, it is years old, so don't worry if you don't see your postal code on there, but you'll get the energy of what I want you to get from that map. That map is YAC's map of survivors by postal code. Now, some dots have 1 in them. Some dots have hundreds of survivors in there. And this is the community that you are now in. This is the most powerful and important thing we do at Yak, is grow and nurture this community. So you now have joined this community if it's your first time connecting with us tonight. Those of you that have been in this community for a long time, you know the richness and the power that exists within that community. It is the community of Yak, and it is a place where you can bring whatever it is that is challenging you, and you're going to find and be able to tap into the wisdom of the lived experience. And that's what we want you to take away. The hookup was created as a way for us to get together in the winter mostly, to stay connected. COVID's been a crazy impact on our year, crazy impact on programs, so we thought, what a beautiful thing to do in the holiday season is to bring another one to all of you. So thank you for joining us tonight. I have not doing this thing on my own. There is always a co-host with me, and she is with me again tonight, the beautiful and talented Kathy Stock.
Hello, hello. Great to be back.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for this. I mean, the set looks great. Everything looks the same. Socially, safeness happening, of course.
We are keeping our distance. And you know what? This was the first year in 4 years that the Chemo Brains, my backup band, were ready and rearing to go. But because of COVID restrictions, they're not allowed to be in the space with us. But they lent me some instruments so that I can carry it on my own. So you're going to be hearing a lot of this. Thank you. Thank
Love
you.
it.
I know they're clapping at home, so I'm going to take a second to bow. You're welcome for that performance. And there will be much more of that this evening. So Chemo Brains, next time, one of these days.
That's right.
They're gonna be here
We
with
would
us.
have had them here this year, but of course we're going to respect all the rules.
That's right.
And we have been respecting all the rules.
Very important.
And one of the beautiful things about the digital spaces is it gives us a chance to stay connected and safe.
That's right.
Two super incredibly
Win-win.
important things, right? So, Kathy, we're going to roll through the hookup tonight. We've got a lot of great, powerful stories, some super important messages. This has been an incredibly challenging year for individually, for a lot of us, for Yak as an organization. I think, Canada-wide, we've seen a lot of change, including the increasing awareness of racism and as it exists within our country and within the health system and within Yak community even. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Alex and Gabrielle, a couple of Yakkers, longtime Yakkers, in the sense that they've been involved in almost everything we do. Have a new book. We're going to talk research. We got a lot of great stuff coming up.
So excited.
But it is kind of the holiday season.
It is.
And
Are you feeling festive?
I am feeling festive.
Nice.
And I am also feeling really good about a poem that you wrote.
My poetry has made it on the program.
I am
So
feeling really
excited.
good about this. So
Okay.
I thought, let's take a minute, let's get festive.
Amazing.
And it would be incredible if you could give me some backup tunes
Oh,
for a
I would
little
love
momentum
to.
and energy on this one.
Oh, it'd be my pleasure.
Here we go. This is 'Twas a Month Before New Year's by the incomparable Kathy Stock.
Thank you. Thank you.
'Twas a month before New Year's, and all through the town, not a creature was stirring because of lockdown. The face masks were hung by the front door with care, in hopes when we need one, we can find them there. The Yakkers were sleeping all snug in their beds, with memories of Yak events all in their heads. I, in my rocky socks, shed a small tear, thinking that there might not be a hookup this year. When all of a sudden, there arose such a clatter. I sprang from my chair to see what was the matter. And there, with their faces all ready to go, were hundreds of Yakkers waiting for a show. On Kathy, on Angie, on Karine, on crew. We must have the hookup. There's much work to do. So welcome this evening. You're a beautiful sight. Happy hookup to all, and to all, a good night.
That was lovely reading.
Yeah, well, that was lovely writing. You probably pulled that out of your hat on the way over here, did you? You wrote that one on the way over to
You
shoot.
know how we do.
I know how you do.
Pressure prompted.
That's right.
That's what we call it.
That's our positive reframing of needing a deadline or thriving in a time of deadline.
Thriving.
So thank you for the holiday piece. 2020 has been wild times, there's no question. And there was something that stood out to me early in the COVID times, and I wanted to put a rant together about it, so that's what I did. And I'm gonna take you through my very short rant, really called Welcome to Our World. So here it is, my rant for the second big cancer hookup of 2020. 2020, you have been something. I mean, in Newfoundland, we got 500 feet of snow in one day, and we thought that'd be the craziest thing we'd see this year. Well, truth be told, it was St. John's, and it was, a couple of feet. Storm of the century, anyway. Businesses shut down, schools shut down. Our community came to a stop. We all settled in our homes, truthfully, long after it was safe for many of us to go out. Call it an unexpected dry run of what was to come. And then, on March 11th, the NBA canceled their season. And COVID-19 became very real for a lot of us. Communities across Canada shutting down, schools, businesses. Everyone except those frontline heroes in grocery stores and hospitals and the like. We tucked into our homes, settled in, and watched as this once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon spread across Canada. It's called a novel coronavirus because it's new. We were, and still are, learning a lot about it. And very early in this pandemic, I saw this rising sentiment in my social feeds from you. You, right there. You see, St. John's had a dry run a few months before COVID-19 hit. But for 200,000 Canadians, they had one long before. For 200,000 Canadians, wearing masks, washing hands incessantly, they already had their lifetime supply of travel hand sanitizer. Over 200,000 Canadians know what it's like to live in isolation and the reality that nothing thrives in it. Over 200,000 Canadians didn't have a choice about how vulnerable their immune system would be to some random virus out in the community. 200,000 Canadians just like you. And every day, 22 young adults join the 200,000 living with, through, and beyond their cancer experience. For us, masks, sanitizer, and isolation is a way of life. Welcome to our world. And we are here among the masses, asking you all to continue to do your part to keep us safe and get us through this incredibly intense time. Wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance, and let's hope that we can all get through this so most of you can go back to life as normal, while most of us dream of tests, scans, and blood that's normal. All right, welcome back, gang. So, early in the March 2020 COVID shutdown, these words just rolled off my tongue when people asked, how are we doing, how are we doing, how are we doing? And we've all been asked that a lot, hopefully. And I just started to say, finding our way forward. And that's what I felt I have been doing personally, and what YAC has been doing as an organization since we hit these crazy uncertain times, and then we moved into this transition of figuring out what was going on. And as we entered that new space, we delivered our last face-to-face event of the year. It was a retreat in Ontario. Middle of March, literally just snuck in before COVID shut down, and then we continued to move forward. And like all of you, yackers of all stripe all over the place have been continuing to find their way forward. And two of those yackers that really have taken the opportunity of COVID and found some silver lining in it are Gabrielle Fecteau and Alex Mandarino, deeply involved in YAC. And they decided that COVID times were a beautiful, perfect time to bring a powerful, massive project like a book to life. They have written a book based on a beautiful theory from Karine Chalifour, our program director. And here is my chat with Gabrielle and Alex about this incredibly powerful project. All right, all right. Here we are on the Big Cancer Hookup, and we are super excited to be connecting with two of our favorite people, Gabrielle and Alex. It is so great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the Hookup.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Geoff.
All right, now let's first dial back to how do you guys know each other? We know how you know Yak. You're young, you get cancer, and eventually you find Yak. But how do you guys get connected in amidst that whole world?
Yeah,
Jump in, Gabrielle.
Kick us off.
Yeah. So I actually saw Alex's profile on the Yak website. He was featured a few years ago, and I found the profile. I was doing a podcast already, and I invited him to be on the show. And a few months later, I went back to him and asked him if he wanted to co-host. So we met online quite a few times before we ever actually met in person. But we're still meeting almost weekly for podcasts, for different things like that. So clearly it's a connection that was important to us, but definitely connected through Yak as well as through our personal projects.
I love it. And that's Soar Above Cancer, which is the podcast you guys have been rocking out together for a long time, which is awesome, bringing awesome content to young adults dealing with cancer across the spectrum, stories and experts, all kinds of important stuff there. Check it out if you haven't already. And for those who've been around Yak for a while, they have heard this idea of the balls of shit theory by our beautiful and talented program director, Karine. I would love to know when you guys kind of first connected with that. Alex, do you remember the first time that kind of got dropped in your consciousness and how you thought about it?
Yeah, I do remember. So thank you, Geoff. I think the first time was probably my first interaction, or maybe second, with Yak altogether, which was the Survivor Conference in St. John's, Newfoundland in 2017. It was the first time, one of the first times I've ever been on a plane. It was, experiencing this newfound glory and love for my cancer experience once I finished my treatment, and hopping on a plane and meeting 100+ individuals who have gone through something similar was already a little nerve-wracking, meeting all these different people. And then Karine steps on stage, either night one or night two. Explicits are flying all over the place, but we're all having fun. And she brought forth this balls of shit theory, and the concepts that were involved, the ideas, the activities, and how you can kind of let go of things that no longer serve you was something that, it seemed like such a simple concept, but especially as you relate it to cancer, it made so much sense. So it resonated then on, and every opportunity I've had to listen to her speak about it again, I'm always grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, we're not afraid of the explicits, and such a descriptive language Karine uses when you talk about balls of shit, and how so often we put them in our pocket, and then we say take them out and smell them sometimes and put them back in our pocket and keep carrying that stuff. I mean, that's part of what she talks about. You guys know all about it. Gabrielle, you heard about the theory, as so many Yakkers have, but why do anything with it beyond that and have it apply to your life? Like, why take it to this whole other level of a book?
Yeah, so we had the chance, the incredible opportunity to go to the last retreat, the last event before COVID started in March. So both Alex and I were there. And again, at that event, we got to hear Karine talk about the balls of shit theory, and we wanted to find a way to get that theory and to get some of the concepts that are around this theory to more young adults affected by cancer, because it has been so important to us that we wanted to share with other people. And as we wrote this book, for me, it became even more important to be able to share this theory. One, because we are in lockdown, and a lot of us feel even more isolated than what we do usually. The cancer experience being an isolator to begin with, but definitely wanting to give that connection to other people and other Yakkers who we know needed as much as we did, and we still do. So that was the main motivator, was the people who are within our community and who unfortunately will be a part of our community in the future. So it's for them.
Love it. So writing a book, like it's a big time project. It's not like just something that you bang out over a weekend or you put in a couple of late nights. And you guys did this together, just like you do the podcast, I know. Alex, what was that process like for you to engage in this kind of a project? And did you anticipate that it was going to be like it is? Or are there surprises along that way? Like, how did you guys make this happen in the real life here?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I know, at least speaking for myself, writing blogs for Yak and other organizations are just, for fun. It's a lot different than writing a book, especially when you're co-writing a book. And when Gabrielle basically brought this to the forefront and it became, this actual opportunity and it became something we were actually diving into, we began structuring it a little bit more and sort of sitting down and discussing things prior to actually writing, as opposed to sometimes writing articles. You can be a little bit more creative. You can take from your own experiences. But at this point, it was interesting and it was a bit of a challenge to try and hone in on some of the experiences that Gabrielle and I have dealt with when it comes to the balls of shit theory. It was really, really helpful having other voices within the young adult cancer community, a few yackers having their voices and their experiences. It really helped to have them have some opportunity to share their story as it comes and relates to the theory. But writing the actual book was definitely a challenge because it was about narrowing down certain things, making sure that we could take a step back when we were ready, because always we were kind of sharing. There were certain nights we would just text each other about this sort of bright idea we had, like a light bulb had gone off in our head. And at a certain point, we realized, I think we're okay. We've structured it well. We've put together our thoughts and ideas. Let's see if others enjoy it and want to read it. So it was super exciting to be able to put this passion project together and make it sort of a real life opportunity and story. But it was definitely some bumps along the way, but with a partner like Gabrielle and the way we worked together with podcasts and such, it was a breeze at the end of it. And we could just breathe sort of a sigh of relief once it was released.
I love it. Yeah, you guys had lots of great experience in working together with the podcast, obviously, so that laid the foundation for the book, and we are excited to see what's next. Who knows what that might be. For both of you, love to know, like, if you think about the book and all the effort that went into it and the lessons and the learnings that you want other people to be able to take from it. If you could pick your most important or the one that resonates the most with you, Gabrielle, what jumps out for you and you want other people to know about the book?
Yeah, I'll take out my book, which I have.
Nice.
And Karine, one of the thoughts that Karine shared pretty early on in the process of us writing this book was everyone is allowed to walk feeling lighter. And I think that's what I want people to take away from this book, is that it is hard sometimes and we carry heavy stuff with us, but it doesn't mean that we need to get stuck here. There is a way for each and every one of us to feel a bit lighter. And for me, writing this book gave me that chance to really understand the power that I can have on my life and in letting go of some things that I never thought that I would actually let go of. So that's what I want people to take away.
Love it. Is there something that jumps for you, Gabrielle, that you have been able to let go as you've thought through this theory and personally? What's changed in your life?
The one that I've been able to let go of, that I kind of went through the book with, so that's the example that I use in the book, was letting go of the social piece that I missed, because I got diagnosed pretty young at 19 and I missed a lot of the social life that I was supposed to have as a university student. And that was one that I had to let go of, and I was carrying for no reason anymore. So that's what I did.
Awesome. Yeah, that is a super tough one. I know a ton of us can relate to that time. You're in hospital, you're home, you're recovering, sometimes for long periods of time, and you're disconnected from your buddies, and that's time that you don't get to have back. So that's a super tough one. Alex, the book and the lessons within. What's one of your favorites? I'm sure you got lots of things, but what's one of your favorites?
Absolutely. And similar to Gabrielle, I'm nice to have the opportunity to have my own book that I could dive into. Fantastic. I think the one thing that Karine made really clear was you might let go of a ball of shit, a thought, of action, some experience, and it might crawl its way back, and you might have to let go of it more than once. And I think what a lot of cancer thrivers can take with them, and one thing that we should really all note, is that we're not necessarily a failure if we let something go and it comes back and we have to hold on to it or look at it again. I think with the experience that we go through, there's so many ups and downs. There's so many things that we have to reframe and look at from a different perspective. That, if something comes back after we've let it go, it just means that we're now stronger and we know how to handle a similar experience again. So it's not necessarily that you didn't do the process correctly or you didn't do it justice. It's just a matter of realizing, maybe this came back for a reason, and let's try and let it go once more.
Yeah, that's right. It's not like flipping a coin here. This is a process, and these experiences, to use Gabrielle's example, like that wasn't just a one Friday night that you missed. That's a huge, big chunk of your life you're talking about. So to be able to process that and get yourself in the right headspace to be able to let it go and move on, that takes some big effort and some processing into itself. And sometimes you need help from your buddies, and sometimes, to your point, Alex, you got to throw that ball of shit in the woods several times before you fully get rid of it. You guys are champs. Thank you so much for joining us on the hookup. Let me see those books again and remind us where we can get it. How do we get a copy of this book?
So
Go ahead.
it's on Amazon. Both the Kindle and the paperback versions are on Amazon. And the great thing is all the proceeds that come from the purchases of both the Kindle and the physical book, goes to Yak, which was really important to both Alex and myself. But we really don't want that cost to be a barrier to you getting this book. So if there, for any reason, and we're not asking any questions, you might not be able to make that purchase, you email Yak and we'll send you a copy of the book. We really don't want anyone to miss out on this book. So please either get it to donate back to Yak or email us to get yourself a copy.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for having Yak's back. You know that we will have yours as long as you want, for as long as this road rolls. Great to have you on the hookup. Check out the Balls of Shit book, and we'll see you all again soon, virtually in our spaces. Take care, gang.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Geoff.
you.
Gabrielle and Alex, you guys are so great. Now, this book is available, as you heard, from Amazon, and proceeds to Yak. Grateful for that, you two, and love that you put your heart and soul in making this project come to life. So proud of you. Enjoy this accomplishment, and we can't wait to see what comes next. Now, as Gabrielle and Alex touched on, and I mentioned, we delivered our last retreat right before COVID hit. So wanted to just touch on, for those of you that haven't heard, I mean, in normal Yak times, we'd be delivering those 4-day, deeply transformational retreat experiences throughout the country for survivors, available to you anywhere you live. We also host Survivor Conference, big family reunion. We were super excited to bring that to the Peg this year in Manitoba, and we are coming back. As soon as it's safe, we're coming back to the Peg. And we also deliver an adventure where we climb Grossmorn Mountain on the west coast of Newfoundland and Labrador, and another really powerful transformational experience. And my co-host has done that. We have climbed Grossmorn Mountain together.
We did. It was a very transformational experience. I actually, a year before I did that with Yak, I was having chemo, and that was one of the plans that I had put in place. And I didn't even know Yak existed at that point in my life. Didn't know about retreats, didn't know about any of that. But when I was lying in the bed at chemotherapy, surrounded by people 3 times my age, I had put in place in my mind that I was going to be well enough in a year to hike Grossmorn. And then I got goosebumps talking about it, because a year later, I'm climbing Grossmorn with other people who, and as we're climbing, I remember talking about a year ago, I couldn't walk across a parking lot. The girl I was hiking with said a year ago, I couldn't cut a watermelon without having to sit down. And then we were doing this massive adventure together. And it was the windiest day I think Newfoundland has ever experienced. Our guide said that it was the windiest time she'd ever brought anyone up, and it was absolute perfection. Wouldn't have changed a thing.
Yeah, it was incredible on top of there, and it was freezing cold.
It was freezing cold, but it was clear and gorgeous and empowering.
Super
it was so empowering.
Yeah, so we're going back to that as soon as we can.
Mm-hmm.
In the short term, we're virtual spaces, right? So we had to hold on the Manitoba face-to-face conference, but we went to virtual space in May past, and we're coming again with another virtual conference, and it's going to be end of January coming up this next month. So next month we're bringing back another virtual conference. It is going to be super exciting. The team are working on it already to get that thing lined up for you. And later this evening or tomorrow, you're going to get an email with a direct link offering you a chance to register for that conference. So no need to do anything right now. And the beautiful part about the virtual conference, unlimited space. So we don't have to worry about this thing filling up in a day or two like our face-to-face events do.
And Geoff, let me just add to that.
Love
we
it.
had a virtual conference for the first time last year, or this year. It feels like multiple years in one year, but in May. And the feedback from that, if you didn't get a chance to go, the feedback from that was that it was as powerful and even more accommodating than meeting face-to-face. So you can think that it won't be as powerful or as meaningful, but it really was. It was a very powerful and cool event that can incorporate people who are not physically feeling well enough to show up for a physical event, and everyone in between. So don't slack on checking out that link when it comes to you, for sure.
Excellent points. I remember Saturday morning, so we were in the virtual conference space. Saturday morning, we did a team check-in before we got everybody into some of the Zoom chats and stuff. And I had a talk with Leslie, program manager, and said, what time did the social committee shut down last night? And she said 2 a.m. Eastern. Mm-hmm. So in that moment, I felt like this is going to work.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens with face-to-face stuff. And the Yackers, you guys are such champs. You just rolled with it. And we had social committee running 6 to 8 Zoom channels with all kinds of different stuff in the low times. And then in the peak times, we had the regular great content from experts and survivor stories. And then Saturday night, Sunday morning, we got up and had a chat, and I said, Les, what time did it shut down? And she said, well, conflicting reports, 4 to 5 a.m. Eastern. And I was like, yes, they beat the record. And then Monday morning we got up, and Newfoundland's ahead of you guys in time zone. So we got up, and Les got up early because she starts work early and checks in, and they were still in the Zoom chat, 6 a.m. Eastern.
Still going
So
strong.
Les is up checking email at 7:30 Newfoundland time on
Love
Monday
it.
morning, and the Zoom chat was still going. So that is what it's all about, though. That's what Yak is all about. It was all about connection. And since COVID has hit and the shutdown has happened, we've been doing other kinds of beautiful innovation by bringing you a whole collection of weekly chats. Some of these are themed, some of them are general. Great way to connect with your peers and to unload some of that weight that you're carrying. Karine's been hosting a weekly talk show, Quarantine with Karine. Now we're calling it We Get It. She's got a whole collection of great experts with all kinds of really powerful stuff to bring to you. And we're going to continue to innovate into this space because we think vaccines on the way, there's horizon and hope on the horizon. But the reality is, I think we're in this space, especially Yackers in our community, for a while yet. So we got a little probably longer runway before we feel comfortable getting back on a plane, for example. So for now, Yak is going to have your back in these new and beautiful ways, as well as some of the same stuff that we've been doing for a long time. So that's where we are, and we're super, super pumped about it.
Yes. Great.
Wicked good. So we are super proud of you, Gabrielle and Alex. High five and great work on this book. Now, Kathy, 2020 has been a wild ride.
It has.
Probably easiest time ever for you to write the Big Cancer News.
There was a lot of content, there was a lot of news to cover, but like all the other major news outlets, which we consider ourselves to be one, NBC, CBS, Fox, all those things, we had to do a little bit of creative broadcasting from home. So we have a Big Cancer News for you this evening, but it's the Big Cancer News Home Edition. Check it out. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kathy Stock, and this is the Big Cancer News. The year 2020 has certainly been an unprecedented one, with dramatic and incredible things happening across the nation and across the world simultaneously. One of those things has been groundbreaking, never-before-tackled research about isolation and the human mind and body. It turns out, isolation is not good for us, and no one has ever attempted to talk about, research, or... Sorry, just 1 second. What? I'm in the middle of it's on the teleprompt. Okay. This just in. Young Adult Cancer Canada has been conducting this research for years and working with young adult cancer survivors who have been dealing with isolation for longer than any of us can even remember. We have a correspondent from BC right now, a young adult cancer survivor who would like to share her opinion on this groundbreaking new medical research about isolation.
No shit.
Thank you, Amber. The 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald J. Trump, is not only the president, he is also a medical expert. This is great news for everyone around the world, not just those suffering with the COVID-19 pandemic, but also for those who are cancer patients. Take a look at what President Trump has to offer people who are suffering with diseases and illnesses inside of their bodies.
Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number on the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me.
Thank you, sir. I can't wait to get my bleach injection. Every year in Canada, 800 young adults are diagnosed with cancer. And 2020 was no exception. Well, the only exception was that those who were diagnosed with cancer also had to deal with a global pandemic, rising political conflict, and murder hornets. This has been Kathy Stock with the Big Cancer News Home Edition. May you have a happy holiday season, and for the love of God, a better year in 2021.
Man, where's my underwear?
Nailed it!
Don't hit me. No, I never.
Kathy, incredible work on the Big Cancer News Home Edition.
Thank
Again.
you. You know, our network was really going through a hard time, but we pulled it together.
That's right. It's good that we have the hair and makeup crew here
Yeah.
for the actual live part
For
of the
sure.
hookup.
That's what I look like in my natural element. So thank goodness for the hookup being in
Preston
place
probably
today.
did your hair for
He
the
did, of
Home
course.
Edition.
10-year-old. 10-year-old hairstylist.
Crazy time. So, 2020 has provided layers of challenge, I would say. And in June, I would say personally, I felt a tension in society that I had not felt before. Certainly around, kind of, I guess, focused on the death of George Floyd, but so many others, and obviously, centuries of racism and a whole collection of challenges that I think often in Canada we look and see down south of the border. But I have learned, that many of those challenges that we see south of the border are prominent in Canada as well. And in early June, right around the day of Blackout Tuesday, we received a whole collection of messages from Yackers representing the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. And, some of those were incredibly helpful and constructive. Some of them were really challenging. All of them, I think, coming from a really honest place, and we did what we do with all kinds of criticism and messages like that. As we took those in and we reflected on that, and then we committed to learning and moving forward to be better as an organization. And part of that learning has been engaging with some of you directly to have a private space where Black, Indigenous, and people of color Yackers can connect. And we've had some support from the BIPOC community within the Yak community. And as part of the hookup, we wanted to bring you the story and then also some messages from one of those Yackers named Carolyn Van. She is an alumni of Retreat Adventure and a member of Yak community for a long time, diagnosed with lymphoma in her late 20s. And here's my chat with Carolyn Van. All right, we good? All right, and we are taking it over here. Big Cancer Hookup 2020, our second of the year. That's how crazy 2020 has been. Carolyn Van, so grateful for you to join us for a chat here on the Big Cancer Hookup. Thank you for making time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. So Carolyn, I know you originally as the super talkative, chatty girl in the very back of the van I was driving on Retreat Yourself Adventure 2015, when you became a face-to-face member of the Yak community. Obviously, cancer, I think it was lymphoma specifically, drops into your life in your late 20s. Take us back to your late 20s. Who was Carolyn the day before cancer arrived, and then what happened to Carolyn after that cancer diagnosis?
Yeah. So Carolyn pre-cancer, or BC, I had my own BC, right? There are elements of Carolyn that are still very similar, and then that there are elements of Carolyn that are drastically different. I was, a busybody. I'm still that chatty, energetic Carolyn, right? Haven't lost that. Always has been, and I think always will, right? Yeah, busy bee, running my own company, always with a huge network of people in my life, very broad set of interests, very social. I was dancing. I was working a lot. My schedule was, packed by the hour, right? If it wasn't in my schedule, it wasn't happening, right?
Right.
I was living in downtown Toronto and always, always on the move. And then, the big C just stopped you right at the tracks.
Right. So you got a diagnosis of cancer in your late 20s and go into a cancer system that's not built for young adults. And I have learned more than ever this year, is also really not built for cancer patients of any age, from the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. So you have a couple of unique sets of your experience as you guide through that experience. And at some point you decided that connection to community, like Yak's, was something you wanted to explore. Like, what led you to that? Was this you're in treatment, you've got your people around you, you feel good, and then later on you felt like this was something you wanted to connect with? Or did you kind of feel like that earlier in your experience?
Yeah. So, when I was diagnosed with cancer, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels this way, right? It was a great deal to process. I, the emotions that I felt initially were none, right? I felt very numb. Nothing really was processing. As many of us know, it's a lot more information than we can humanly process at that velocity, at that speed. And while I noticed that the people around me, the people that loved me, my friends and family, they were going through all the emotions, I felt nothing, or I defaulted to the Carolyn that just always knew what the next move was, right? The default me would put things in a project plan and know the answer and the solution to everything, right? That's kind of my comfort go-to default mode. And, I had to get used to the fact that this was a life scenario I was in where I didn't have the answers to anything. I still found that people were coming to me for answers, and the answer that I had to provide people was, I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know what the prognosis is. I don't know what next month is going to look like. So I noticed people's discomfort around me deal with this uncertainty, right? So I was in a very interesting seat in the house, kind of watching all of my friends and family go through this, experiencing it on my own. And, while friends and family played a huge role in my healing process, still to this day, I knew that while cancer, the experience of having cancer was, there wasn't a lot of that within my family. Therefore, conversations could only go so far. And while they were very supportive as much as they could, I knew that I could get further in conversations if I were to connect with people who might in some way understand a little bit, perhaps, of what my experience with cancer would be like, right? Yeah. So, I'll admit I was like pretty skeptical, right? Of all different resources out there, right? Because I have grown up in environments where I have been othered, right? I had been made to feel like I don't belong, even optically, right? So, but I decided to give it a shot. At this point in my life, it's like, look, Carolyn, let's just like try anything. I don't really remember how I found out about Yak, but I as you mentioned at the top of this conversation, I took part in the adventure retreat, and it was great.
Yeah. And, that skepticism is a personal thing, I know, for a lot of people, the uncertainty about the outreach, and then having been, part of a system or systems that have never really catered to your custom specific needs, likely heightens that for a lot of people. We're so glad that you came in and connected then. And I know we've been connected off and on throughout that time. GAC is a place that you can come when you need it, and as often or as little as that is. And then earlier this year, in the wild ride that 2020 has been, we reconnected really around Yak's post around Blackout Tuesday. So, early June, if you can flash back to this time, a huge racial uprising, I think, led in the U.S., but really felt around the world. A challenge, I think, specifically focused on the justice system in the U.S. and then likely again throughout the world. But so we made a post about that, just trying to be supportive of it in our ignorance, but with good intention. And we got a bunch of really, challenging and important messages from Yackers, including you, and really committed to learning, doing everything we could to take the defenses down and understanding what the fuck is happening.
Yeah.
What's happening in the world right now, but what is happening like in our community and as it relates to this challenge. So that happened, and grateful for you and Asha and Robin and so many others that reached out with messages. Again, messages of challenge, and Yak has got to be better. But messages of encouragement as well, to say we believe that you guys can be better. And then, later in the year, we will get to this beautiful place where we can engage with you professionally to help us with what I would call like, a deep internal reflection, and then helping us set ourselves up for some next steps that I am committed to making systemic within Yak. So we can build and enhance. So we've got this culture that we're shifting around learning, which you've helped with a lot. But we also need to make sure that we take off these blind spots and we open our eyes as much as possible, so we can identify when we're acting with bias that's not helpful. And we need to get to this place of inclusiveness, diversity, equity, beautiful words that you and I have talked a little bit about. I would love to hear a couple of your thoughts around, experiences with the system, experiences with Yak, when, people just don't understand what they don't understand. And I would definitely put myself in that space. I'd love to hear about some of the thoughts that have jumped for you in the last few months.
Yeah. So 2020, it was a very interesting year. Interesting is a word to use. And, I think what it shed light on was how much we don't know. Right? How much, why, for example, why has what has been happening for hundreds of years, right, around the world, why is it such a surprise, right, to certain people, right? Why is this uproar happening? While the uproar, yes, is good, right? This is not the first time an uproar has happened, and I think what a lot of the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities are looking for, and what we all really should be looking for, is how that amounts to action, right? So, reaching out to organizations like Yak, and some of the organizations that I care deeply about, that where I have benefited from, was an act of love, right? Was an act of hope, and was an act of wanting to make sure that people feel supported in such a way that more of Black, Indigenous, people of color folk have these spaces to heal and to work through some of their own challenges, in this specific case, experiencing cancer, right? Yeah. So it was an interesting, I was talking about this earlier, of being in an interesting seat in the house, right? It was a very interesting, we were in a very interesting seat in the house, watching all of this activity happening, this, all of a sudden, uproar happening. And, I will only speak on behalf of myself, but I think one of the things that's on my mind is this going to be another flavor of the month, flavor of the year, campaign type of thing, where it's just top of mind for a little bit and then it kind of fizzles out, right? Yeah. The critical piece about this is that are those next steps. And, some things that we know of history and past efforts is that acknowledgement, truth and acknowledgement is certainly not enough, right? And many people are still having a hard time with that truth piece and feeling comfortable with the acknowledgement piece. And that tells me that we do have a ways to go towards reconciliation, action, and co-conspirating, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think for all of us, and most certainly for those who are in positions of power, the only way that we can move forward in a way that is that has an element of equity and justice is if we understand what happened in the past and what currently is still happening and currently being funded, right?
Yeah, no, I get it. And I know the hope, I hear it in your voice, and I know the skepticism is well-founded based on many of these situations and efforts or uprisings from the past. And all we can say at YAC is our commitment is deep and authentic. Nothing close to perfect will we be, nor will we even be aiming to be. But we are deeply committed to moving forward and getting better. And part of that is, an awareness of that first week and then continued, which is saying the word racism, calling it out when we see it, or if we are witnessing it from afar or close, and then to just being open to learning more about what we don't know and didn't know prior. So we're in that space. Like, YAC's not going to change the world on this. We know that. But we're going to change our world and our community, and we're going to be better for those that are within it and that have yet to join it. But I wonder about you, if you've got a message or a thought around hope for what we can do next, whether that's organizations like YAC or others, that, like, what gives you hope when you see these, medium-sized, small, little organizations, big, massive systems that you work with and think through all the time? Where do you find hope in what we might be able to do in the next step of this?
Yeah. So I think hope to me means that every individual, regardless of your age, the color of your skin, where you are in the world, hope to me means that we are aware of the power that we hold and that we can influence these greater global issues that exist even within our own circle of friends or family, right? I think that something that feels disempowering is when we feel that we don't have say, right? And sometimes we take a look at solving these big issues only in these big ways that require a significant amount of funding, that requires, us to be in positions of power within an organization. But everyone has a podium, right? Even if you have one small child that you live with, right? Like, you have a podium to that one child, right? Yeah. If you are an older sibling, right, you have a level of influence and power, right, over that younger sibling. Right? Within your group of friends and peers that you play hockey with, right? Like, you have power and say within that circle, that group, right? And that is such an important consideration to me, because with that comes the acknowledgement of how systems work, right? So often we kind of dismiss those small little details down to, how the Canada Food Guide is designed, how there's a lot of racism ribboned in food justice, nutrition, right? And food systems. We sometimes that could be considered as these small little details. But what we're missing out on is that all those small little details are part of a system that add up. Right?
Totally right.
So
no, I love it. I agree totally. And no better place for all of us to be mindful of than to focus on our own sphere of influence and our own things that are within our own control. In my experience, it's the best way to ensure that you're successful at whatever it is you want to do, is realize the power that you have to move something forward. Listen, so glad you could connect with us and join us on the hookup. I am grateful for this, for you connecting to Yak and reaching out and challenging us and then helping us be better. I know we're going to lean on you more as we go forward. Thanks for joining us tonight on the hookup.
thanks for having me, Geoff.
And my chat with Carolyn Van. Thank you, Carolyn, so much. And thank you to all the Yackers who have connected with us on this topic of racism within the community, within our communities. And Yak certainly committed from the first moments to be better. And that commitment is authentic and deep. And I can say personally for me, I started a reflection in this space. The first moment, that first day, we got those messages and have learned some things that never ever occurred to me would be the case. Health professionals perceive the pain tolerance with people of color and black people to be higher than those who are Caucasian. So the lighter the skin, their perception is that you have a lower tolerance for pain, and it's a wild thing to think about. And we think, of course, we see the representation of the BIPOC community within our health system and the challenges that we see on that front. I would say, from my perspective, there's two things that I learned that have deeply changed how I interact with this community and how I behave every day. And the first was to just do something, not to hold back and not say something or not ask or not move forward for fear of doing the wrong thing. I just go. I do it with an open heart and with the best of intentions, and when I screw up, which I inevitably do, I just apologize and learn from it. And the other thing that I was really taken back by was just how important it is to use the word racism. When you see it, say it, is one phrase that has been shared with me often since June of this year, and I have committed to doing that, and did it on a conference last week when we were looking at a case study, and I'm learning about that, and I know we all have a lot to learn, and we're committed at YAC to continue to make this place a truly inclusive space. The word every means a lot at YAC. Every cancer, every stage. We want it to mean everyone, literally, that you feel safe in this space, and that's our goal. So thanks for Carolyn for her guidance and for being part of this hookup. It is almost the end of 2020. 21 is coming, Kathy.
It's on its way, guys.
Like it's like this close.
You can see it in the distance.
So we reached out to Yackers and we asked them if they could bring one word into 21. What's the word that they want to bring into 21?
I love that.
Yeah, so let's look. 21's going to be hopefully a beautiful year, and we need some of that hopeful, beautiful energy to go into it. So let's check out the Yacker video, looking for themes and words heading into 2021.
The word I'm bringing into 2021 is balance. I would like my output to match my input, so I need a little bit more self-care. I'm gonna go to the gym.
My word that I'm taking into 2021 with me is acceptance. And for me, that means accepting what adventures, emotions, and situations that the year will bring me.
What I'm going to use to take me into next year is resilient, because no matter what's put in front of me, I'm going to get through it.
Word and theme that I will be taking into 2021 will be growth. This year, very similar to my cancer experience, I think I've learned more about myself than any other year. And I think that's been the adaptability and changing circumstances that we've had to deal with. I want to set career goals, relationship goals, social and personal goals and I think 2021 is just a step in the right direction.
My word is going to be reflect. I'm going to reflect on my past actions, on my current actions, and everything going forward. I hope that's helpful or insightful to some of you.
The word I'm bringing with me into 2021 is grateful. I know 2020 wasn't ideal and it wasn't planned, but a lot of great things came out of it for me. I was able to spend more time with my kids. We got a new pandemic puppy. And I had a reminder that I work with and for the very best people in this world.
In 2021, I will be manifesting my dreams. As a young adult cancer survivor, or rather a thriver, I know that life is too short and too precious to not go after what you want and to not live your life to the fullest, because you are worth living for.
One word that I choose to bring into 2021 is the word giving. Giving to myself, but also giving to others.
The word that I'm taking with me into 2021 is unknown. Because as soon as you get a cancer diagnosis, your entire life changes, and as much as you want to plan for the future, you can't. And 2020 really showed that. It was unpredictable. I don't think anybody saw COVID coming and how much it would change our lives, but I keep trying to find the good in every day, and that's what I'm working towards, and that's what YAC has done for me, and I'm so thankful to everybody at YAC and everything that they've done, and YAC really has your back. So here's to the unknown.
The word I'm taking into 2021 is progress. When I look back on this year, it feels like the world stopped and everything was standing still. But I'm definitely not in the same place, for better or for worse, than I was at the beginning of the year. And even with everything going on, we still made huge strides in the scientific community, in human rights, and I think it gives me hope that no matter what happens, even next year there'll still be progress, and I'm really excited to see what we'll achieve.
My theme for 2021 is bring it on, because after this shit show of a year, there's nothing we can't handle.
A word or theme that I am taking into 2021 is time. The pandemic taught me to slow down a little bit. Well, it kind of forced me to slow down a little bit. And that is something that I want to continue into the next year.
My word for 2021 is focus. I want to focus on my breathing. I want to focus on reconnecting. I want to focus on all the things that 2020 wouldn't let me focus on and steered me in a weird direction. So 2021, here's looking at you.
You guys are so great. So many familiar faces there with such great messages for 21. Thank you for that. Kathy? If you think about 2021,
yes,
what's the word that comes to your mind?
I just keep thinking grace. Grace for myself, grace for other people. You know, we're in such challenging times, and that can cause people to become fearful and defensive and separate. But I think the more grace we have for ourselves and for others, the better 2021 is going to be. So that's my word.
Love it.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm picking up on a theme that I've had that I shared a minute ago. I'm saying forward is my word for 21.
Love it.
And trying to represent that at home for kids and Karen and family, just to continue to move forward, and then of course to bring that mentality to work every day. Is we just got to continue to move forward, I think, and I know we can, and I know we will do that together. Because we are so much stronger when we are together. And that part I'm excited about 21 is the togetherness of the ACT community and our opportunities to grow it even more at an even faster rate than we have been in the last few years. So I'm excited about that for 21.
Love it. Onward, upward, forward. It's going to be great.
That's right, with grace. Awesome work. So you know what else is great is the ACT Prime study.
That is great.
It is great. So the young adults with cancer in their prime study, YAC. YAC was waiting for years. We razz her all the time, Dr. Sheila Garland, our research partner. We get requests all the time to help with recruitment for research. We've done it. We still do it all the time, and whenever we can. But we felt we could do something big if we had a partner who like really got us and
A
was
powerful partner.
Oh, so it was just someone that you felt like you were totally in sync. And then Sheila moved to Newfoundland.
Oh.
And everyone that we knew together said,
Serendipitous.
you guys should meet and get together. So we did. Over 5 years ago we met. Amazing. And then we built this beautiful research partnership based on respect and shared goals and engagement. And the Yak Prime study was born from that partnership. And we collected 622 stories. It's the biggest young adult cancer study ever done. Many of those Yackers watching tonight, many of you guys, your stories are in that. So we have this huge pool of data now.
Amazing.
Huge pool of data.
The largest one ever done.
That's the biggest young adult cancer study ever
deal.
done. So we have this huge pool of data, and now we have this amazing research team across Canada, as well as some lead researchers in the US that are looking into this data to better understand the challenges faced by young adults with cancer.
Fantastic.
And we've been publishing papers, presenting at conferences. This stuff is going on. Karine Chalifour, super champ, program director at YAC, was able to catch up with Dr. Fiona Schulte from University of Calgary, one of those amazing YAC Prime Team research members. And she has a paper coming out that is about quality of life, and she's been super connected to the study. So we're super excited to be able to bring this to you. Karine Chalifour's talk with Dr. Fiona Schulte on the YAC Prime study in young adults with cancer. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karine. For those of you who might not know me, this is a better setting. For those who might not know me, I'm the program director with Young Adult Cancer Canada. And for the last few years at the Big Cancer Hookup, we reserved a little segment where we had a health professional come and talk about what they do or something they found. And this year, we really wanted, once again, to have the spotlight, at least for part of the show, on our YAC Prime study. For those who don't know, YAC Prime study is a research project that we took on in 2017. 622 young adults in this beautiful country participated in the study, which is really the biggest of its kind for this type of survey. And you provided us with enormous amounts of data that we are still working through to really hopefully gather information that then can help maybe change and improve some of the care and services in Canada. So that was kind of our hope for us to gather stories and then to find out and learn about it and then to also give it back to you. So today, this is kind of what I'm going to do with my beautiful, wonderful guest, Fiona Schulte. Fiona is a researcher that is part of our YAC Prime team, and she's many, many other things. So Fiona, thank you for being with me today. How about you start by just telling us a little bit about who you are first?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, Karine, to be here today. I'm thrilled to be able to speak to you and to all your YAC community, really about kind of sharing some of the results that we've found with this data. So my name is Fiona Schulte. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Oncology at the University of Calgary, and so my primary role is to do research. But I'm a trained clinical psychologist as well, and I work actually here at the Alberta Children's Hospital with a population of young cancer survivors. So that includes pediatric, but adolescent and young adult cancer survivors as well. So clinically, I see some of the challenges that survivors experience, and then I have the opportunity to really look at that from a research perspective. So I feel really blessed in terms of the role that I have and being able to bridge kind of both the clinical and the research, and was so thrilled to have been brought on to the YAC Prime team. This is such an incredible collaboration and partnership. And has been a real learning for me in terms of really collaborating with you guys from YAC. I think as researchers we often get into our little silos and we do our research and we publish our data, and it doesn't go much beyond that. And so to have the opportunity today to be able to speak to the community about some of the results we found and the real implications of that is a real privilege. So I really appreciate this.
Thank you. We do too. Like, seriously, everyone who's watching, we have been privileged to work. So Dr. Sheila Garland, who's a psychologist with Memorial University here in Newfoundland, started this with YAC, and she brought in this amazing team with Fiona and a bunch of others, and really everybody embraced what was really important to us at YAC, which was we want to make sure whatever we find, we bring back to the community and to health professionals and to whoever can change things. But we didn't want to, not diminishing any of the value, but we didn't want for what we find to only live in journals that you can only access if you're, in a hospital or in a university. So this is great that you're here with us. And today we, so obviously, Prime, like YAC Prime, is huge. We're examining and looking at a variety of elements in there. But one of the things, Fiona, that you mostly focused on in the last little while is around quality of life. This is a term that you probably heard thrown in and out during your cancer treatment and cancer kind of experience. But can you tell us a little bit about, okay, what is quality of life? And then a little bit about what you did with that through Prime.
Sure. So quality of life is something that I have been really interested in understanding among our cancer community. So it's a subjective rating. So one's kind of own thoughts about, sorry, I have a dog.
Like the dog, he's going to be around.
It's a kind of one's own perception of kind of their feeling about their overall functioning. It's multidimensional, so it means that it represents kind of a number of different aspects of one's life and would include maybe physical functioning, psychological functioning, social functioning. And I think it's really important to investigate because it serves as a sort of general overall assessment of well-being and can capture multiple facets of functioning. So I think I think that's really important to understand. It's a nice overall measure of one's well-being. And I think when we look at it in the context of cancer, I think it really allows us to sort of quantify functioning. So, it's tough to say overall I feel okay, but this is a way that we can really kind of try and quantify, okay, when you reflect on physically how you're doing, psychologically how you're doing, socially how you're doing, how do we capture that? And that's quality of life. Yeah. So in the study that we've done with the YAC Prime data, we aimed to do really kind of two things. And one was to assess the quality of life of the YAC Prime community and those who completed the questionnaire compared to the Canadian population. So we had data from the general Canadian population that we could compare the scores completed from the two groups and see, okay, how's the YAC Prime community doing compared to what we know of those in Canada. And then the second main aim of the study was to say, okay, what do we think contributes to quality of life? So what are the main sort of factors that might relate to one having a good quality of life or perhaps a poor quality of life. Mm-hmm. And so we looked at a number of factors, demographic factors, socio-cultural factors, as well as other measures that were included in the YAC Prime study, looking at different elements of psychological and emotional functioning.
Yeah. So that's it. And I think, of course, we can say quality of life, we could argue, is important for everybody, but for us to be able to focus and say, no, we want to look at the young adult community, and then we want to compare cancer and non-cancer just to see, again, is it all in our heads? Or are there real differences? And then and depending on what we find, what can we do about it? So I think what you were describing of all those elements, it's something that we talk about with all of our community members all the time, socially, physically, mentally. Like, of course, cancer comes and has a massive impact. Depending on the individual, it varies, but ultimately it changes things. So what did we find? So it's a quick snapshot, but let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what we found was really quite striking, and I think, I would guess, and I'm as you had mentioned, Dr. Sheila Garland was part of this partnership from the beginning, and I had the good fortune of being brought on. My assumption is, in initiating this survey, this was sort of what people expected. What we found was those AYAs who have had an experience with cancer had significantly lower quality of life than the general population. And we were quite careful in our analyses to make sure, we weren't comparing young AYAs with an older Canadian population. So we matched the two samples in terms of their age and in terms of their sex. So we had two comparable samples, and AYAs who've had an experience with cancer reported significantly lower quality of life. Mm-hmm. And in fact, then we categorized those quality of life ratings into, okay, this is poor quality of life, this is average good quality of life, and this is excellent quality of life. And what we found was 50% of AYAs who've had an experience with cancer reported poor quality of life. And I'll just break. So there was two components of that quality of life that we investigated. One was more focused on the physical functioning, and one was more focused on the emotional functioning. So 50% reported poor emotional functioning, and about 35% reported poor physical functioning. So that when you consider half of the population report significantly poor quality of life, I think that's quite striking.
Yeah.
We looked then at factors that might be related to quality of life. So what do we think contributes to those who are experiencing poor quality of life? And when we looked at the physical functioning, what we found was that income level, so an income of less than $40,000 a year, poor sleep, worse body image, were all related to poor physical functioning. And then when we looked at emotional functioning, there was some overlap, actually. Poor sleep quality and body image were significantly related to emotional functioning, as well as fear of cancer recurrence. Mm. So, I think probably speaking to your community, no one would find that surprising. Poor income level, you're not sleeping well, you're worried about your body image, that those would contribute to your functioning. But I think this was really important because it's the first time we've shown this across the Canadian population, and now have the data and the evidence to say, okay, this is a real problem, quality of life. We need to focus on how we can make this better. But here are some potential targets for what we might do to make this better in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's where, like, every time we talk about the YAC Prime data and the findings, we're always very mindful. And first, we want to give this information to all of you out there. And at the same time, we want the information to feel empowering, not depressing. The idea here is not to say, oh, quality of life is horrible, physical, and this is not the key. The empowering piece in there is, for you to know, you know what? You're not the one who's doing anything wrong. You have been impacted by cancer, and there's a variety of other factors who can affect your quality of life physically and emotionally. But then what we find exciting is to think of, now that we have those information in data and in research supported, we can go to other healthcare professionals, institutions, and then push to say, this is what we're looking at, this is what we found, and here are some of the ways we could focus on to help people and to change that effect that we're seeing now. And I think that's where there could be some power in what we're finding. To know, and at YAC, like, we've been, of course, building our programs offerings, knowing, okay, these are big elements. Let's make sure we try and provide support in those: fear of cancer recurrence, body image, financial information, so all of those things. But ultimately, I think in a bigger scale, I would love for many health professionals to also catch on that information and change things.
Absolutely, and I think the good news is there are evidence-based interventions we have to improve sleep, to improve body image, and so now really saying, okay, we know these interventions work. So how do we make sure we can make this accessible to the young adult community? And the other thing, and I totally agree with you, is the message to healthcare professionals. And in fact, what I think for myself, one of the biggest takeaways from this study or this particular set of data is that so what I didn't share is that the average time since the completion of treatment for this sample that we looked at was more than 6 years post. So these are not
in treatment, or
they are not on treatment where you would expect there to be a lower quality of life. These are individuals who are 6 years post completion of their treatment for cancer, and I think that what this really tells us is that, and I know that this is really your mantra, that the journey doesn't end when treatment stops. No. And we need to really advocate for more support within the healthcare system beyond the stop date of treatment, and that really within this community there needs to be more support, more advocacy, more attention to longer term healthcare needs.
Yes. Beautiful way to bring this to a close. I think ultimately these types of messages, we believe in our hearts because of partnerships with people like Fiona and our YAC Prime team and a bunch of amazing colleagues in the country who believe in the young adult cause, that we can change some things. And I think this type of knowledge is going to help us do that. There's a lot more that's going to come from YAC Prime, but for this very short snapshot that we did together, I was quite taken by, as you know, by your paper and the quality of life information we got from the data. I'm still kind of digesting some of this, but thank you so much for coming in today, explaining some of that. Keep an eye out for all of you who are working on a lot of things YAC Prime related to make sure that information gets to you and gets to everybody who can use it. So keep an eye. And in the meantime, looking forward to doing a lot more with you, Fiona. Thanks again. And I hope you have a great rest of the day, I guess, with your dog and whoever.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a privilege to be able to come and speak to you.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Fiona and Karine, you are champs. Thank you for that. And promise from us at YAC HQ to all of you, gang, you will see in 21 the first Prime report summarizing all of the amazing findings we've gathered to date. And it'll be delivered to you in super fun and creative ways, and probably also a traditional old boring way, like a report too. The Prime report, look for more of it. It is coming. And I getting a little teary here, Kathy, but I can't believe it, but we've come almost to the end of the show.
You know, if any year was going to have 2 hookups in it, this is the perfect year. So I feel good book ending this year with 2 hookups.
I agree.
So sentimental and wonderful and perfect.
Yeah, it has been a wild, crazy year.
It has.
And there is always, I believe, opportunity and challenge within a crisis. And there is this mix within the COVID times. And we've been doing our best to find those opportunities when we can. And bringing you an extra hookup has been part of that beautiful surprises of 2020. And we've got some great new exciting stuff for 21 coming.
That's right.
But it is now time for us to say goodnight. And part of saying goodnight, of course, is saying some thank yous. So the guests, Alex and Gabrielle and Carolyn and Fiona, thank you all. Everybody who participated in the Survivor video, thinking about 21. Extra special thanks to Trist and Daryl, to Kathy, and to the Chemo Brains for understanding that, although they would have been in, it was so understanding of them to bow out to the COVID
Well,
times.
they've screwed us over so many times. They were very gracious.
You feel like it's okay. They're going to be okay with that.
They'll be all right.
Don, Karine, Les, Angie, joining us in the office. Sherry, like you guys are super champs. Lots of things happen at Yak, and I don't do most of them. So we have an amazing team that makes shows like this happen and raises the money and delivers the web programming and others. Gabrielle, also the newest part of that team. We're super grateful to have all of you part of this group. And so many partners that across the country share this message of the hookup and Yak programs with you, tell you all about us, that we're here to have your back. Thank you to all of them. Crosby Group, you guys can't tell, but we're not in the same office as we were last time we did the hookup. Things look very much the same. We're in our new digs, which has been graciously donated, generously donated by the Crosby Group, and we're super grateful for that. Mm-hmm. So, well, I got any other massive thank yous. I got everybody else who watched Newfoundland Government, first government, Newfoundland and Labrador, to identify the unique issues of young adults facing cancer in their provincial cancer control strategy. They're leaders, and we're grateful for it. And many others have begun to recognize the unique challenges that we all face. Now we're going to continue to work to convert that into actual resources and real change. And having you here tonight hopefully has been a little bit of change for you. And you are now in this community of Yak that is connected virtually for a long time. And then when safe and ready, we'll be back to our regular face-to-face stuff. For 21, I hope we all do just continue to find our way forward and that we can do that together. Thank you for connecting with us tonight. Yak will have your back today and every day going forward. And to take us out of the second hookup of 2020, I'm going to ask the lovely and talented co-host of the Big Cancer Hookup, Kathy Stock, to play us out.
Is burning low upon my tabletop. The snow is softly falling. The air is still within the silence of my room. I hear your voice softly calling. If I could only have you near to breathe a sigh or two, I would be happy just to hold the hands I love on this winter's night with you. Smoke is rising in the shadows overhead. My glass is almost empty. Read again between the lines upon each page the words of love you send me. If I could know within my heart that you were lonely too, I would be happy just to hold the hands I love on this winter's night with you. Fire is dying now, my lamp is growing dim. The shades of night are lifting. The morning light steals across my window pane, where webs of snow are drifting. If I could only have you near I would be happy just to hold the hands I love on this winter's night with you, and to be once again